The problem is very intuitive. So we have a database of faces of different people, maybe different viewpoint of those people, and we have an input image like this. We want to find out which person is that. Okay, so it's a lot of uses in biometrics and security and all kinds of things. So what will be a simple approach? So we have an image, and we can take the gray levels in that image and make a long vector out of that, and maybe we can get several views, several examples of that same image, and put in the database. Then we are given an unknown image, we make a vector out of that, and we just compare one by one, and whichever matches, that's a match. So that'll be the first thing you will do, So the simple approach, have problems. One is that these images tends to be very large. Even if you have 512 by 512 image, you have 250,000 pixels, and you have many views of each person, then many people, then you compare, it will take a lot of time. So also when you use this raw gray level, there's a noise, there's lighting problems and so on. So to solve this problem, first step is that we want to reduce the dimensionality of this vector which represent the face, and for that we are going to use a principal component analysis, or PCA. Okay, and with that we'll find these eigenvectors of this correlation matrix, and from that we'll select few most significant eigenvectors, and that will help us to do this more efficiently and quickly. So we have gone through the review of eigenvectors, eigenvalue. Before, again, I want to make sure that you guys understand that when you hear eigenvectors, eigenvalue, don't faint, don't get scared. Number one is I have covered this. Don't tell me, say, well, can you tell me a book where I can find eigenvector? It's right here. This is what you need to know. That's it. So I'm going to do it again. Okay, and this I'm going to ask this in a final exam. So don't complain that eigenvector, eigenvalue don't know. Okay? So listen carefully. It's a very, very simple idea. You don't need any other book. You don't need any other course. Say, well, I want to take a course first and come back here. This is simple. So eigenvector, eigenvalues. Okay? So eigenvector is a special vector for corresponding matrix A, so that if I take a vector x, multiply with A, I get a vector x back with some constant lambda. That constant lambda is called eigenvalue. And if x satisfies this, then x is eigenvector. Simple. Okay? So, how do we find the eigenvalue and eigenvectors of a matrix A? The way we are going to do it, we'll take a matrix A and subtract it from it the lambda multiplied by identity matrix. I is identity matrix. And find the determinant of that equal to 0, and that give you a polynomial, and find the roots of polynomial. Then these are the eigenvalues. So once you know the eigenvalues, then you can apply the definition of eigenvalue, eigenvector, find the eigenvector. Okay? So, example here. So this is a 3 by 3 matrix, and we want to find eigenvalues of this. And I'll show you the eigenvalues are 7, 3, and -1. It can have maximum 3 eigenvalues. Sometimes it has less than 3. Depending on how many columns, how many rows it has. So, and these are the corresponding eigenvectors. So if you take, say this one, its eigenvalue is 3. If you multiply this vector with this one, you will get the vector back and eigenvalue multiplied by that. So let's do that. So this is -1 plus 4 will become 3. And this will become 0, 6, and this will become 0, 0, and 0. Okay? So there are 3 and 6 and 0. And eigenvalue was 3, so that become 1, 2, 0. So this is indeed, this is the eigenvector of this with this eigenvalue. So that's, you can verify that, because that's the definition of that. So now let's talk about, how do we find these eigenvalues. So we have matrix A, this is identity matrix, multiply by lambda, subtract it, and this is A, this is identity, and this will become -1 and minus lambda, 2 minus 0, 0 minus 0, and like that. So you get this one. It's just element by element subtraction. Then determinant of a matrix, you start with this, remove this one, multiply this, subtract this, then you do this one, minus, multiply this one, and then this one, like that. So if you do that, then from here you'll get -1 minus lambda, 3 minus lambda, 7 minus lambda, and this is 0, so we don't get anything there. Okay, and then the next one is 2, so it'll become -2, remove this row, this column, and this is 0, so we don't get anything, and this one 0, so you won't get anything in here. So this is what we have, and we simplify this. The roots of this is -1, 3, and 7 from this. So these are the eigenvalues of this matrix. Then using any of these, say this is eigenvalue, we can find out the eigenvector just using the definition. And so this is matrix, this is the identity, the eigenvalue is now -1, so it will become +1 here, and this is the vector we want to find out. It has to be 0. So you add this up, so it becomes like this. It's -1 plus 1, 0, 2 plus 0 is 2, and so on. So now this is a linear system, and we want to multiply this with that. That'll give you 2x is equal to 0. Multiply this with that. 4x1 plus 4x2 plus 4x3 will be 0, and this will be, everything is 0. So from here we know that x2 has to be 0, which is this one, and from here x3 has to be 0. So now x1 doesn't have any constraints, so we can pick any number 1. So that is the eigenvector corresponding to this eigenvalue, and you can find eigenvectors for the other two. So that's eigenvector, eigenvalue. Okay? So now let's go back to face recognition. So what we are going to do is essentially we'll find eigenfaces. So we'll find eigenfaces, and that way we can recognize the faces. So make sure that we don't run out of time. Okay. So what we are going to do, that we will have the corresponding to each image, we'll take the image and make a vector out of that. So this is the vector U. So this is the first row of the image, the second row, third row, and all these rows. So these are the elements within the row. So this is the M by N image, and let's say we have small n samples for each person, and there are p persons. So we'll make this matrix A. We'll put all these images in that big matrix as a vector. So this is a first person, first view, first person, second view, and nth view, and the second person, third person, and pth person. So we'll have all these. These are the examples we have. Okay? So from this A matrix, we are going to find L matrix, which we'll call correlation matrix, which will be nothing but the A transpose. and we will just find out eigenvalues of this L matrix. Okay, and these will be the eigenvectors of L matrix. We'll call phi 1, phi 2 to phi n, and these will be the bases of the phase space, that we can represent any phase as a linear combination of these eigenvectors, or these are called principal components. So we want to find these eigenvectors. First, there will be fewer of those, and other thing will be that they will be sufficient to express any one of the image as a linear combination of those eigenvectors. So that is what we are going to do, and so therefore each phase is represented as linear combination of eigenvectors like this. So once we find eigenvectors, then any phase can represent a1 phi 1, a2 phi 2, where a's are the coefficients and the phi's are the eigenvectors. And now the L matrix, which we found, the A transpose is a symmetric matrix. So these eigenvectors of symmetric matrix are orthonormal, which means if you take any two eigenvectors, find the dot product. If they are different, it'll be 0. If they are the same, they'll be 1. It's very similar to this rotation matrix we talk about. So this is orthonormal matrix, orthonormal vectors. Okay. So therefore, if we take the u x, the phase, which is unknown phase, find the dot product of the ith eigenvector, because as you know that u is like this, represents a linear combination of that, so using that, so finding dot product on left side and the right side. So now this is the ith eigenvector. We multiply with each of the elements as summation, so it's a1, a2, a like that. So we just expand this, and then phi I is outside. Now we have find dot product of phi I with phi 1, phi 2, phi 3, phi n. So what will be the result of this? AI, because the other one will be 0. Yes? So all these elements will be 0 except the AI, whereas phi I with phi I is 1. Phi I with other phi I is 0. So only remain is AI, which means if we know the eigenvectors, we can find these coefficients and we can represent any phase in terms of eigenvectors and coefficient, because that's a representation. Okay? So that's it. So we can find these different coefficients, and let's skip that and we go first here. So what we are going to do, when we want to do phase recognition, we'll do first training. We'll create a matrix A from the training images, compute matrix C from the A matrix, and then yeah, actually that let's not skip this thing. Let's do this one. Okay, so one other thing, then we can talk about the next thing. Now, what's going to happen that this C matrix we have can be the A matrix, the L matrix which we caught can be a large matrix, and computing the eigenvectors of that large matrix will be hard. It will take a lot of computation. So instead of that, we'll make another matrix called C matrix, and the C matrix we'll define like A transpose A, which is just a transpose of the L matrix. So as you remember, the L matrix we had, what we defined here was the correlation matrix, and that was shown here. It is A transpose and C will be A transpose A. So the transpose of the L matrix. So the reason we want to do that is because C matrix now will be smaller matrix. And the example is that if we have the let's say we have let's look at this one. So let's say we have 10 views of each person and we have say 100 people. So, and the dimension of the image is 250 by 250. So then tell me what will be the dimension of the L matrix. So first is the dimension of this vector, because we have 250,000 elements, so each vector is 250,000. Okay, so we have say 10 views of each person, and then we have 100 people. So we have 100 times 10, which is the 1,000, and 250,000 dimension in the column and the 1,000 columns there. So this is 250,000 by 1,000, and then the L matrix will be 250,000 by 250,000 because A transpose. So it's a huge matrix. So to find the eigenvectors of that will take a lot of time. So instead of that, what we are going to do is make a C matrix which will be A transpose A, and instead of 250,000 by 250,000, it will be 1,000 by 1,000 because of transpose. Okay? So now we'll find the eigenvectors of C matrix. Now the interesting thing is, if you know the eigenvector of C matrix, we can find eigenvectors of the L matrix from that. And that's simple. And we can show here, let's say alpha I is the eigenvector of the C, then we will show that A alpha I is eigenvector of L. So it's very easy to find alpha I because C is small. Once we know that we multiply by A, we get eigenvectors of the L, and which is shown here. So since alpha I is eigenvector of C, it does satisfy this constraint that C alpha I is equal to lambda I and alpha I. Lambda I is eigenvector. Okay, eigenvalue. So then if we multiply A transpose on left side, and the we define the C, we define A transpose A, alpha I, lambda I. So that's just definition of this. And then the next thing what we are going to do is we are going to multiply A on both sides, A here and A here, which is A here and A here. Now this lambda I is a scalar, so we can just take it out here. So we have A alpha I, we got A here. Now as you see, this is A transpose, okay, and this is what? L, and this is L, this is some vector, because matrix multiply A with alpha is a vector, and the same vector. So we have the matrix multiplied by some vector, we get that same vector back, and we get lambda I. So which means that this indeed A alpha I is the eigenvectors of L if alpha I is eigenvector of C. And what we did, we computed the eigenvectors of C because it's a smaller matrix, and then we can find eigenvectors of L using this, and that's what was missing. Okay, so we'll finish the discussion on face recognition. Last time we were talking about that we will have this matrix L and C. So L is a large matrix because if we put each image, which is say 250,000 dimension vector, so it'll become 250,000 by 250,000. But we can do with a smaller matrix, which is C, which is A transpose A, and then we can, if we can find out eigenvalues of C, then from there we can find out eigenvalues of L. Essentially, we'll multiply so this is a definition of if alpha I is eigenvalue of C, then this is true. So this is this eigenvector, and this is eigenvalue lambda. Then this is a definition of the C, which is A transpose A. And if you multiply A on both sides, here and here, then this can be A transpose, and A alpha we put in here, and then from this where here, lambda I A alpha. So as you see that this A alpha I is the eigenvector of this A transpose, and A transpose is L matrix. So we can find these eigenvectors of L from the eigenvectors of the C, which makes it simple. So now the process will be that we will compute a matrix A from the training images. As we say, let's say we have 10 views of each person. We have 100 people, so it's 1,000 images. So we'll have these 1,000 columns in A matrix, and from that we'll compute C, and then we'll compute eigenvectors of C, and then from eigenvectors of C we'll compute eigenvectors of L, and then the main point here is that we want to use as few as possible eigenvectors. And originally, if you're going to use this long vector, its dimensions 250,000. It's a very huge vector, and we can't compare that with all other faces. It will take a lot of time. So the main point of doing the PCA is that we want to reduce dimensionality, and the dimensionality depends on how many eigenvectors you have. So you'll have total will be large number, but we want to select the most significant eigenvectors, and they will be important. We can just get rid of the remaining one, and we will order these significant of eigenvector based on eigenvalue. If the corresponding eigenvector have high eigenvalue, that's more important. If the very lowest, then it's not important. So that's what we are going to do. We'll select the most significant eigenvector, and we'll decide we want 5 or 10 or 50 or something. And then once we have eigenvector, we can compute coefficients, as we already talked about. And we are going to do the recognition in the coefficient space. Okay? So for each person, coefficient will form a cluster because they are similar. So you have person 1 coefficient, person 2 coefficient, person 3 coefficient. So that's our training. So training, what we have done, come up with the PCA, the bases. Now once we have bases of eigenvectors, then we can find these coefficient A's. And then we will take that A vector and find the A vector for each example of each person. So suppose we have 100 people and 10 views, so we'll have 10 people for person 1, 10 for person 2, and so on. So since the same person, they should be similar, so they should be close together in the coefficient space. Okay? Yeah.
For the selection of the most significant eigenvectors, what is my criteria in order to determine this is not important, we can drop this one?
Eigenvalues. So you look at the eigenvalue corresponding to that eigenvector. If it is very small, then it's not significant.
Well, I was more asking about what is my threshold? Like, how do I know? Do I have to just play around with that threshold?
Yeah. So you can the select that ultimately what you want to be able to do, that using enough eigenvector, then you want to reconstruct the image back, So you want to look at some sample examples, like your even training example. Say, well, if you use 50 and reconstruct the image back, what's the difference between the original one and reconstructed using that? And so you want to minimize the difference. So you want to select as many as possible eigenvectors so that the difference is maybe 5% or 10%. So that's people do that. Okay, so now the recognition is pretty simple. You are given an image, you compute a U vector from that, flatten it, and then compute the coefficients using the eigenvectors, and then decide that person belongs to which cluster, person 1, person 2, person 3, by finding the distance, and you say that's a person. Okay, so it's a simple. This is actually a MATLAB code. You can run. It will work, and this will do that. So as you see here, that we are generating C matrix. This is your transpose A transpose A. Then to find eigenvectors, eigenvalues, this is just one command, as I told you before in MATLAB. So this will find eigenvectors, eigenvalues of C, but we'll put in this one. So this will be one matrix, will be another matrix, and then the value C matrix will have only diagonal elements. Those are the eigenvalues. So we'll take a diagonal of that. We can put in a vector SS. Then we will sort those, that whichever the highest will be. So again, sorting command you can use in the MATLAB, and that way you will get these indices sorted. This one now corresponding to these indices, then you will select the corresponding eigenvectors. So these were the eigenvalues. Because they are scalar, you can sort them, and then this will give you the sorted eigenvectors based on these eigenvalues sorted. So once you have these eigenvectors, then you want to get the eigenvectors of L, as we talk about, just multiply by A. And here we are selecting only 5, which is very simple, very few eigenvectors, 1 to 5, as you see here. And then we want to generate for all our training examples for each person the coefficients. Okay, so those are the coefficient, because we have the eigenvectors of C multiply with eigenvalue L, then we have eigenvector L, then we multiply with A transpose, we get coefficients. And then for each of the person, in this case we have 30 people, then we want to find the average, which is the centroid of those people in that first class, then centroid of people in another class. So those are the clusters we have. So that's the training basically. Now you want to recognize, you will enter which image you want, and then compute again the coefficient of that image, and then you want to basically compare that with all the models you have, which is shown here. So you have model 1 to up to 30, and this is the input image which you computed here, and whichever give you the closest or lowest error, that's the image technique. So it's pretty simple code to do the face recognition using eigenvector or PCA or eigenfaces, essentially finding the eigenvectors and then finding the eigenvalues. And once you have eigenvector, you can project that into the new space, and you use the coefficients of those to cluster these different examples of each of the image. So the idea is that the different views of a same person will be similar, so they will cluster here. So this person 1, person 2, person 3, and so on. And then when you want to recognize, you are given an unknown image, and you again map it to the eigenvectors, find the coefficient, and then find whichever is closest. That's it. So that's very nice. Yeah. You have a question? Yeah.
So what you're saying is like
Yeah.
it's a transform.
No. So the eigenvectors of the symmetric matrix are also always
Yeah,
orthogonal.
I know, but the PCA is like a transform, right?
Mm-hmm.
And can't we just and most of the time the eigenvectors are not orthogonal to each other, so the bases have correlation to each other. And if we transform the image to these bases, we have like it's not a good transform. Can't we just use a better transform with orthogonal bases?
Yeah, so I'm not following. You're asking a few things. So okay, so first let me say, listen carefully. The matrix we have, the L matrix, is a symmetric matrix. Eigenvectors of that symmetric matrix are always orthogonal. Yes? That's the answer. Yeah? Okay. Yes?
So in this particular method, we're trying to differentiate between different faces. So
Yeah, different faces of different people.
yeah, so using the same method, can you also do it for a single person with different expressions and all?
Yeah, I mean, in principle, then if you have, many, say you have, say, six.
Data with different expressions.
Yeah, if you have different, you have, say,
Sad and
exactly, that's right. If you have 6 expressions, you will have 6 classes. Instead of 6 people, you have 6 classes, and you can do the same thing. And we actually did the extension of this for recognizing the speech, lip reading. So, you have video, you say A, so you have sequence of images, you say B, sequence of images. So again, you can follow exactly the same process. Now the vector you will make will be very huge vector because you have many frames in a sequence. But you can do that exactly. So we call eigensequences. You can do that. Okay? Yeah. Any other question? No? Okay. Yes.
How do you reconstruct an image from the eigenvectors?
Yeah, I mean, so see, as we talked about here in the beginning, so the whole thing is that so what we are going to do, we have an image, we make a vector out of that. That's a U vector. Okay? So now from that we have, say, P people, and for each one we have N samples, different views of each person. So we will make this matrix A. We'll put all these examples of all the persons. So this is first person, and there are different views, second person, and P people. So from there we'll make a L matrix, and then we'll find eigenvectors of that L matrix. Okay? Now the idea is that the U vector, that any image, any column, we want to represent a linear combination of these eigenvectors. So these are the principal components. Okay? So once we know the eigenvectors and we know the these coefficients, then we construct this back. That's the way you can reconstruct back. So eigenvectors defines like bases. Now we know what are the coefficients. We multiply with that, then come the image. And of course the vector, then you make an image back from that. Okay, so look at this. So let's keep going. Yes, please.
In that example, you are loading a faces.math.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have this available?
Yeah. Well, there'll be actually assignment. There'll be assignment. We'll do this thing. So you will do this and LDA and maybe something else. It will be interesting. So we have to locate some face database. I think bigger one. This one I have, that load mate is very old. So we have a lot big data set now. Okay, so let's go, and then we can start the discussion. Okay, so this is whatever. Here we go. Yeah, so this is, a little different way to kind of say the same thing and kind of repeat, so that make sure you understand well. This is in Zelinsky's book, which you have. It's a free download. So Now, there was a work in 1990 by these researchers, and they were interested in compression of images, and in particular, say they wanted to compress face images. Okay, so since, as you asked that, well, how can you reconstruct the image from eigenvectors and coefficients? So if you can do that, then basically you're doing compression. So what will happen, that you find the bases first, and bases are fixed, then to compress an image you just need 5 numbers if you are using 5 eigenvectors. So 5 numbers, those coefficients, you multiply those coefficients, corresponding eigenvectors, sum them up, you get the image back. So that is kind of very efficient way to do the compression. So what you do normally, that you when you find these eigenvectors without normalizing the mean, then you have to add the mean. So if you want to reconstruct an image, these are your eigenvectors, these are coefficients, multiply these coefficients correspondingly to eigenvectors, add them up, and then add the mean, and that will be reconstructed image. Okay, so this is example of that's original image, and these are the eigenfaces, these are the eigenvectors basically. Now if you take those eigenvectors, multiply these coefficients, you will reconstruct what is in C, and that is pretty good image. And the JPEG will give you the one shown D, which is not good. Of course, the reconstruction from very small, 85, only 85 bytes. The JPEG, this is for 530 bytes, and which is high, but reconstruction is not good. Now, what is the catch here? Because still people are using JPEG and JPEG 2000 and so on. What's the catch?
You need to store the eigenfaces.
Yeah, you have to store the eigenfaces. You have to have these eigenfaces. So the bases are the cost that you have to have those. And in JPEG you use a DCT, discrete cosine transform. So their bases are fixed, which are like the Fourier transform and part of that. So that is the catch. Okay. So so now the other point here is that this VCA, what we have described, it's a very simple first step, and but if you look at a little bit more detail, first is we need to, if we do that, we need to subtract the mean from each of the sample vector, and then do the C matrix, and this is what we had, the A transpose, and that's why we are calling this correlation or covariance matrix. Remember we talk about these terms. So this is called scatter of covariance matrix, where we are basically subtract the mean from each of the sample and then multiply with transpose. So the eigen decomposition then will give you eigenvectors, which are in the U, and those are columns of U, and then C can also be written as the eigenvalues and then eigenvector I multiplied by eigenvector J. So now one thing you will see that and that's the way we are representing, that's the way we are finding coefficients. The A's, we just multiply take the unknown vector, we want to find its coefficient, subtract from mean, then multiply with ith eigenvector, we get ith coefficient. So if I is 1, then you get A1. If you take second eigenvector, then you get A2, A3, and A4, A5. That's the way, and we have talked about this, that's the way we are doing. The A is the coefficient. So we will, as I showed you before, to reconstruct, we take the mean and then find the product of the coefficient with the eigenvectors, and this will give you the reconstruction, and that's the way what you saw here. That's a reconstruction, and that's kind of compression. So if you look at this little more detail, so we have, say, different people which are shown in the circle, and this is a face space, and we are simplifying this as a 2D space. And so this is the mean vector for all these faces. And so we want to find the distance in the face space. And these are the distances from the mean. So therefore, if we want to project this x vector in this face space, we will call it x tilde, and we'll subtract from mean, and that essentially is the coefficients a1, a2, square them under root, and that is the distance in the face space of any arbitrary vector x. Now if you want to find the distance between two faces, then we will take the coefficient of x and coefficient of y and subtract component by component, and that is the distance from, say, this space to this space. So everything is played by the coefficients, because eigenvectors, once we found, they are fixed, and then we just want to use them to cluster them. We can cluster because coefficients of this person will be similar as shown here, coefficient of another person will be similar, and so on. And we can find the projection of this unknown vector. We want to say, where does it go on this? Projection means taking the 250,000 dimensional vector, projecting, say, 5 dimension, and then maps here. Now you want to say, well, is it close to here, close to here, close to here, and that's your face. Okay? So this is another way to explain the same thing. But the main thing now we want to talk about that, well, in all that right now, we are not using the eigenvalue. Even though we are using eigenvalue to select the most significant eigenvectors, but once we have eigenvectors, then to find the distance, we are not using eigenvalue. We are just using coefficients which are computed using the eigenvectors. So the next thing is that will be good to use the eigenvalues also to find the distance. And that distance is called Mahalanobis distance. Okay? So that distance is weighted by the eigenvalues, as compared to here, we were just finding subtraction of a and b. Okay? So that will make a bit different. That will be good. So so that distance essentially, instead of only, so distance of a particular projection x, which is x tilde, instead of a's, we will divide each a with the corresponding eigenvalue. Okay? And that is Mahalanobis distance, and that will give you better results. So therefore, we are going to take these eigenvectors and pre-scale with the eigenvalues. The diagonal matrix is A, and then the simply standard way to find distance between 2 points is Euclidean distance. But the Mahalanobis distance is weighted by this matrix S, and that's a diagonal matrix which will have these eigenvalues. Okay? So that is one new thing you can do to help improve the simple PCA based approach, which will just find the program I gave you. That does not use eigenvalues to find the distance. It was just comparing coefficient from coefficients. Okay, so that's one point. That's a good point, and there was actually a whole paper just about that. So that's one thing. And then if you look at, do you have any questions so far? So let me go to any confusion or anything. Yes.
So S is the diagonal matrix containing the eigenvalues, right?
Yeah. So see, whenever you do we have talked about SVD and all those things. So as you see here, that when we say we find eigenvalue vectors of the C, so essentially you get these three matrices. U transpose, and then this gamma or whatever you call it. It's a diagonal matrix, and that's what SVD give you, essentially that thing. Okay, any other question? Okay, let's keep going. So now, what are the problems in face recognition? So one is the within class variation. So you have a same person, and in the same class, the person, different view may vary a lot from one particular view. These views can be very different, even the same person. That's called within class variation. Then another, of course, is between class variation. The face image of this guy will be very different than this guy. So there are these two variations, and you need to understand between class and within class. So if you look at this set of images, these are actually images of same person, and as you see, they look very different depending on the illumination condition, and that's a problem. So to have a system which should be able to recognize it's the same person, it's a big challenge. So the now better way to do this face recognition instead of doing this PCA is called LDA, linear discriminant analysis, and this is also called Fisher faces, because this was proposed by Fisher researcher, and the other one, the first approach, called Eigenfaces. This is Fisher faces, and this will give you much better results compared to PCA. And actually, you guys can, that will be a part of the program also. Okay, so these are slides I got from this professor in Texas A&M, and I think these are pretty good slides. So this is very interesting stuff, and it's very powerful, and it can be used in many different things, but you need to understand very, very carefully. So I'm going to go slow on this. Okay, so LDA, linear discriminant analysis, and so again we have, say, d-dimensional sample. So suppose you have a face image, we make a vector out of that. So it's a 250,000 dimensional vector, and let's say we have only two classes, this guy and this guy. So we want to distinguish between these two, or this guy, and this, and this and her, men and women. Okay. So two classes problem, linear discriminant analysis. So, and the way we are going to do it, that we'll project the vector x onto a line, and this projection will be with w, we'll multiply w vector with x, so w transpose will give a scalar, and that we will call y. Okay, so like suppose here is one possible projection. So we have, let's say the faces represent only two numbers, two-dimensional space, x1, x2, and we have two people. One is a green person, other is the red person. So original space, gray levels, for example, these are the way these different people are. Different views of green persons, blue person are here, different views of the red persons are here. As you see that it's very difficult to distinguish because they're so close. So let's say we project them on this line which is showing. So again, that's not possible because the red and green, they are overlapping. It's not a good projection, so we cannot distinguish between them. Okay? So now if you look at this projection, that line we are projecting to, now we can separate because the blue one are further away from the red one. So we want to find that line, that W, on which we project this two-dimensional space so that they are separated. Okay? So what is the separation of what is the measure of separation? We will say the distance between the means should be, large. So mean of these vectors is, mu. So first person mu1, different views of first person. We just add up them, divide by n, it's mean, and now mu tilde will be the mean in the projected space. That's what we are interested in. After we multiply by w, so projected space is y, and so what we are doing, it can be any space. In this case 2, but it can be any d-dimensional space. We'll project with only one dimension, just a line. So we add up y and divide by number of people, and but we have defined y, w transpose x, so we'll substitute that. So which means the mu And as you see that this is a constant, we can take it out, which put it here. Now this is a summation of x, which is this one, so it's a mu I. So this is the mean in the projected space of class I, and this is a mean in the original space of class I. So that's pretty simple. So this way we will find these means, two means, mu1 and mu2 in the projected space, and we want to maximize their difference. If the means are further away, then we can separate them. So we want to maximize the distance between mu tilde and mu2 tilde, mu1 tilde, mu2 tilde. Mu1 tilde is the mean in the projected space Y, and mu2 is for class 2 and mu1 is for class 1. And this way, as you see, that this essentially is the original space mu1 minus mu2 just multiplied by W. That's the transformation. So in that case, we will have like this. We have the blue person, mu2, the red person, which is the mu1, and we are projecting into these, and there are some number of these people, number of views of this guy, number of views of this guy, and as you see that these means will not help us because there's an overlap here, and there's an overlap in this direction and so on. That's really a problem. So it's not a really good measure to only maximize the means. Now, in addition to that, if we look at the standard deviation of what is called within class scatter, normalize that with that, and that will help us. So what that means, that this figure here, so those are the same, person 1, person 2, the red person and blue person, and there are lots of views there, and we are projecting to this line, which is here, and this projection is such that the red person is up from here to here, blue person up to here, from here to here. Now they are well separated. And the way we are going to do it, that we are going to, of course, maximize the separation of the mean, but also minimize their standard deviation, the difference, the scatter. So what we have is, this is the within class scatter. So we will take different examples of, say, first person, ith person. We subtract its projection, we sum it up, we square it and sum up all these deviations from the mean of each other person. So as you remember, this is like a standard deviation. That's what they do. If you subtract them from the mean, the value, and square it, it's called standard deviation, the variance. So this is the variance of the first class. Similarly, we will have variance of second class, and we will add up those two. So now this is what we want to maximize. Maximize this and minimize that, so that we will have the this is the normalized by the within class scatter. Okay, and that is what we want to do. So we want to find W. We want to find W so that we can project these vectors so that this criteria is maximized, numerator is maximized, denominator is minimized. And that makes sense because we want to be away from each other, which is mean, but then depending on distribution, we want to make sure that they also are considering the spread of each of the class. And the spread of each of the class is given in that denominator. Okay? So then the question is, how do we find the W? Okay? And that's the thing. So we want to find W. In this case, we have two classes, so we just want one line. Okay, so the process is that we will find these scatter matrices, as for each class Si. Just take the vector, subtract it from mean, and then find the transpose, multiply with that, and then this will be we can find for first class, second class, add up that. So this we will call SW, which is the summation of these scatter matrices. And these are the within class, because here we are using only samples from ith class. So it's the first class, we'll use only first class. Then S2 will be second class, and then we'll add up those, and that is the within class scatter matrix. Then we actually want these scatter matrix in the projection space, because that's where we want to find the W. So we know that the Y is obtained by multiplying W with X. That's what original one. So we can take this, substitute here, and then we can take out W transpose from here, which is here, and then X minus mu I. And when you square it, this and multiply by transpose and W and all that thing. And we'll call this thing Si, and this is W transpose W. Okay? And similarly, we'll have S2, and we'll add up those two, which will get you W transpose SW, which is shown here. So that is our within class scatter matrix. Then we look at the just distance from the mean, as we did before. So we want to minimize the distance from mu1 to mu2 in the projected space, and projected space defined by this, like that, and simplify this. So W can be common, and mu1, mu2, and mu1 minus mu2 transpose. And we'll call this one SB, which is the between class scatter matrix, because here we're using two, mu1 and mu2, the difference between them. So this is the between classes, this is the within classes. So we have two matrices, SB and SW, and those are what we're going to use. So we have this J, W transpose SBW. We want to maximize the between class scatter, and we want to minimize the within class. We want to come up with W so that all the examples within a class, they are very close. There's not much, spread out. But when we want to spread out the classes which are in different, the example from which are different. So that is good, and we want to find W such that this thing is maximized. So whenever you want to maximize and minimize, what you do? You have learned so far, and then you become an expert. What do you do? Gradient. You differentiate it, okay? And we'll differentiate this thing with respect to what? What is the unknown? W. So you want to differentiate with respect to W. Good. So we want to differentiate this with respect to W. So that's numerator, denominator, differentiate. Whenever you have a function, your numerator, denominator, how do you find its derivative? What's the first thing you do? You take the denominator, square it, and then go to the denominator, numerator, keep the denominator constant, differentiate numerator minus, then keep the numerator constant and differentiate denominator. That's what you learn, okay? That's what we're going to do. So that's what it is. So we square the denominator, W transpose SW, and then we keep the denominator here, the same thing here, and then we differentiate this one. Now this is, as you see, that the W transpose SBW. So this is a matrix multiply with another matrix, and there's another, this B. SB is another matrix, and it's like a square. When you have vector x with multiply x squared. So derivative of this would be 2SBW. Okay? And you have done this, I think, in the motion model. So that's the first part. So, here minus, now we keep this constant and differentiate this one. So this is instead of SB, this SW, same thing. So this will become 2SWW, and this is just a constant. So that's good. So now we can simplify this and divide by this, both of those. That's what we are getting here. What we can do, we can multiply numerator and denominator, multiply left side by W transpose SWW, and the right side also. Now the right side is 0, so this will again become 0, but when you multiply with this, then this square will disappear. We'll have just this one. Okay, just to simplify. So that's good. So now we'll simplify. We have two terms, this one upon this and this one upon this. So this whole thing. Now 2 also we can get rid of that. It's a common again on 0, so we can get rid of that. So you have W transpose SWW, and we have SBW divided by this, and minus W transpose SBW and SWW divided by this. So it's nice. And so what do you get here? This will disappear. So we'll get SBW minus, and this is what? This is your J, is it right? This one, this is J. So this is J, then SWW is equal to 0. So we are getting there. We want to find W from this. And what we are going to do is take SW on the other side. So SW inverse SPW minus JW. And we can write down like this, JW on the other side. So what is this? SW inverse is a matrix. SP is a matrix. Two matrices multiplied together as a matrix. W is a vector. J is a constant. W is a vector. So what does this tell you? Looking at this, what is W? Eigenvector. W is eigenvector of this matrix. This is amazing, you know? W is eigenvectors of this matrix SW inverse multiplied by SB. And we know how to compute these matrices. You know? We just discussed this. I'll give you an example. So which means that we can do LDA by finding the eigenvector of this product of two matrices, and we are done. Okay, so this is an example. We have two classes, and these are their values. They are samples, and it's just two-dimensional, very simple case. And these are the matrices you will compute: S1, S2, and mu1, mu2, and then SB, SW, this right there. Okay, so then multiply this SW inverse SB matrix, find eigenvectors, eigenvalue. This is the eigenvalue, and corresponding to this is the eigenvector, and this will be your vector. If you project on this, the blue one and the red one, they are separated. So that's the science. See, so it's very intuitive that what we want to do. We have a problem, and we define that we want to do the projection. Because we have two classes, we just want projection on one line, and then we define what should be the metric. We say, well, mean should be separated, and also they should have a less minimum scatter within class, and that's like a variance. So we have numerator, denominator, and then we did the differentiation, because whenever you want to maximize, differentiate, with respect to unknown equal to 0, simplify all that, come up with this, and we already learned this is eigenvectors, and we can just use EIG command and MATLAB. That's it. So that's called LDA, linear discriminant analysis.
Just
Yeah.
looking at it, it looks like almost our resultant vector is perpendicular to one we get from SVM that separates the classes. Is there any relation?
Yeah, so that's another thing. So see the LDA is very old. Actually, the Fisher paper is 63 or something, and even long time ago. So typical pattern recognition work. So this approach of doing this discrimination classification is called it's called the generative approach. So the SVM, if you look at, is also find separating two classes, and it's a very different approach. SVM say, well, let's find the hyperplane, and you maximize the margin, and so on, and then its optimization is a quadratic programming. So that is the latest work to do SVM as a classifier. Now what ultimately you can do, so one thing you have to understand here what we are doing, that we are going to the right space, and the good example is here, the first one I showed you. So we did this projection in this linear discriminative vector. Now, which means we will take a vector, any d-dimensional vector, we'll map it to one-dimensional, one number, which in this case is y, and this is separating very well these two classes. Now on the top of it, actually you can use SVM. If you have many examples of each person, then that will learn, and people actually do that. First you do the LDA to go to the right space, then you do on the top of it the SVM. Also you can do, first you do PCA, reduce a space, then you do LDA. So PCA LDA is another way to do it. So there are different variation of that, but to answer your question precisely, that see in SVM we were also trying to separate the two classes, and we formulated this problem in terms of finding the hyperplane and the margin and so on. So in that case we did not look at any like distribution, like a covariance or mean. We are just looking at individual samples, and we want to find which are the samples which matter. Those are the support vectors. So it's a very different way to do that. Here we are using all the information, because we are going to look at the covariance matrix, the within class, between classes. So we are using all the information and all the samples coming with this LDA. In SVM, we use, even though we use all the information to find the boundary, the hyperplane or the margin, but once we found that, then we forget about other things. So it's philosophically they are very different approaches, and this one is linear. It's very easy. You can differentiate and you can get this W. The SVM, as you are struggling with that quadratic programming, so it is even though quadratic programming actually is good as compared to any other nasty functions which is not quadratic, but still there's a lot going on. So that's that. So let's keep going. Yeah, please.
In the first method for PCA, it was easy to understand what you do when you have several people.
Yeah.
With LDA, how do
Yeah.
you do it with
Yeah, that's what we are going to do next. So this was just 2 people, and it was very easy. And now we want to do C people, C classes, you know. And to answer, briefly, there we will get many vectors. Here we are getting just one vector, W, we're projecting. We can separate. But when we have C classes, we'll get C minus 1 vectors. And again, we'll take a vector, input vector, we project to that space, the same many, and then we can separate. And it's exactly the same, yeah.
So does that mean we always compare 2 classes with each other?
No. So this I just discussed was 2 classes. Now suppose you have C classes. So you can use LDA. I'm just going to explain for separating C classes, but the method will be exactly same. You will find SB, you will find SW, only you will have more summations because many classes. And the result will be not one eigenvector, but there will be many eigenvectors. And then at the end, you will take a vector, input vector, and map it to C minus 1 dimensional vector, not just one number. And then you can, in that space, you can classify very easily. Okay, so let's look at the C classes. And so the idea now is that this projections from n dimensional space to C minus 1 dimensional space as compared to 1 dimension. And generalization is same thing, that we will, SW will be the summation of all these S matrices for C classes. There we were doing only 2 classes. Now you're going to do C classes. And then each SI is defined exactly same. We'll find the mean first. We'll subtract the mean from each sample. And this will be class 1, class 2, class 3. And we'll add up all those to get SW. So there's no problem. Only instead of 2, now we have C. So now between class scatter is very similar again. So we'll find for each of the class here SB. So we have the mu is the mean of all of the samples, and we'll subtract that from each of the class means, and we'll get SB. And then so this is your total scatter matrix, which is shown here. And then the principle is same, that we'll take a vector X, we'll find this W. Now W now is a matrix, and we'll map it to many different eigenvectors, and they'll become Y. So originally this was a vector, now it's a matrix. Okay, because we are going to do this for each of the possible sample here. So then these are more details. These are the means for each of the class, and these are your SW and SP, just exactly same. You just keep repeating C times. So in the previous way we had summation from 1 to 2. Same thing. Now here, as you see, that this W transpose, W is now a matrix, it's not a vector. Now if it was a vector, W transpose SBW will be a scalar. Okay, but now it's a matrix. So W transpose is matrix, W is matrix, and all this thing. So this will be a matrix because this will have these eigenvalues. So therefore, what we are doing here is finding the determinant of that. W transpose SPW is a determinant of that. And similarly, W transpose as WW is not a scalar. It will be a vector, and it's a matrix, and we'll find the determinant of that. So you do the same. Now you don't have to do anything because this follows what we did before. And then again, you want to find the W1, W2, W3, and WC minus 1. These are the vectors such that this is maximized, and same thing as we did before. So actually your program will be same, you just will change the summation from 1 to 2 to 1 to C here. So this is all the same thing. So here's the example. So we have coffee beans, and there are 5 types of coffee beans, and they use the sensors, and they get 45 sniffs on those, and you get a 60-dimensional feature vector. It looks like that. These are the different coffee beans. Okay, and so if you use PCA will map these different coffee beans, different types like this, and it's very difficult to separate them. And if you do LDA will separate them pretty well. So it's a good example of use of LDA as compared to PCA. So main thing is that you have input some n-dimensional d-dimensional vector. You find these SB, SW, for these classes, sum them up. It becomes eigenvector problem. For 2 classes, just a vector W. For C classes, it's a matrix, and you project using those vectors. You project your thing, and then that's it. So this is another example. Now we have 3 classes. The brown one, the pink one, and so on, the other color. And we want to separate them. And this is the first eigenvector. And you can project these things here, and you can well separate them. And this is one class, this is another class, this is second class. Now if you do PCA will give you these 2, and it's very difficult to separate them. So this is an example from Drexelski's book. And again, you will have compute SW here, SB, and this is your that vector, linear discriminant, the first one, and this is your product of these, and so on. Okay, just to summarize, linear discriminant analysis will do the dimension reduction such that we can preserve the class discrimination, and which is important. PCA doesn't do that. PCA just use all the vectors, find some projection. There's no class information. We are just putting these vectors, treat them here. We have separate these matrices for each different class. We look at their means, individual means. We subtract from them. We find the covariance and so on. So then LDA maximizes the difference between the means normalized by the measure of within scatter class. So maximize the between class and minimize the within class. So that's why it was in denominator. The first one was the numerator. We want to maximize that. So we project a sample X into a line for the 2 class case, get a scalar Y. And same thing, and this was a function that we want to do. We want to find U. In the other case was W. Again, SB, SW, just repeat. And this is your between class, and this is your within class. So if you have something like this, you have here 3 classes. Green one, blue one, and red one. The means are given, mu1, mu2, mu3. And for each one we given also a scatter. SW2 is a scatter of the matrix for the second class, and SW3 for third one, and so on. And mu in the center, which is shown in the cross, is the global mean of the whole thing. and then we have these SB. So this SB1 is the between class, SB2 is between class for class 2, and this SB3 is for class 3. So that's what this does. And within class, this is the way we compute. So we do this for all K classes. This is, and each of them we basically subtract from the mean for that class. And then we add up all those. Between class, we are subtracting the global mean from the class M mean, and we multiply with transports like a standard deviation, and we do this for all the classes. So then we want to find this U, so this maximize and generalized eigenvalue problem, because this matrix U is the eigenvalue of this matrix, two multiplication of these two matrices, and the result is set of projection. So the differences are that PCA is like squeezing variance into a few dimension, number of linear function equal to the original variables, and principal component PCA are always orthogonal. As we say, it's a symmetric matrix. LDA is maximizing class discrimination, number of linear function equal to the number of classes, it's actually -1. And LDAs, these scores are not necessarily orthogonal. Okay, so here's an example. If you have these two classes, then the green one will do, PCA will do like green one, and the LDA will do the orange, and the orange will do better because if you project on the green one, the blue one on the green line, and the red one on the green line, they will be confused. We cannot separate them. But if you project on the orange line, the blue one and the red one, they are separated. So this is a similar thing I told you before. Okay, so there are these lots of resources